Good evening, everyone, for another tale of heavy metal from Smith County Public Library. I am Robert here in our Palace Library, and we want to start discussing King Arthur. King Arthur is probably the most famous king in history and legend. If you ask anybody to name a king, King Arthur is probably going to come up. There have been many, many versions of King Arthur. There has been many books, poems, stage musicals, movies, TV, but some of the more well-known and better written ones were actually in the 1800s. Le Morte d'Arthur by Thomas Mallory, Alfred Lord Tennyson's version of King Arthur, and Howard Pyle, an author who wrote primarily more for children, and he wrote tales of Robin Hood and also King Arthur. So we're going to be reading from King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table by Howard Pyle. Chapter 1, A Secret Birth. In ancient days there lived a noble king named Uther Pendragon. No one was as courageous, fair, or beloved at the time. With the help of his two advisors, he was a great ruler. One of his advisors, Merlin, was a powerful enchanter and a great prophet. Sir Ulfius, his second advisor, gave him advice in battle. With their help, Uther Pendragon was able to overcome all of his enemies. He became the king of England. After Uther Pendragon ruled for many years, he took a noble wife, Igraine. She had been married once before to Gorlois, the Duke of Tintagel. With the Duke of Tintagel, she had two daughters. One was Margaise, and the other Morgana Le Fay, who became a famous sorceress. After Gorlois' death, Igraine married Uther Pendragon. He loved her children as if they were his own. Soon after they were married, Uther and Igraine were to have a son. Merlin came to Uther Pendragon with a warning. Lord, in the near future thee will become sick and die. Your child will be in great danger. Many enemies will try to kill him to prevent him from becoming our next ruler. Please permit Sir Ulfius and myself to hide him until he can guard himself from such dangers. Uther Pendragon replied, I shall face death bravely and with cheerfulness if that's what's planned for me. As for my child, if thy prophecy is true, then the danger is great. Thou must take him to a safe place. He will be the most precious gift that I leave this land. On the day the baby was born, Igraine wrapped him in a blanket and placed him in a cradle made of gold. He was beautiful and strong. That evening, Merlin and Sir Ulfius whisked the child away. Shortly after, Uther Pendragon died, as Merlin had predicted. Then the entire kingdom fell into chaos. There was much fighting and death. Traveling became impossible. Those who dared to travel were snatched and held for ransom. If ransom couldn't be paid, death would befall them. The land groaned with trouble. Nearly 18 years passed with this upheaval. Finally, the Archbishop of Canterbury summoned Merlin. Merlin, thou art the wisest man in all the land, the Archbishop said. Will peace ever be ours again? Merlin replied, This country will soon have a king wiser than Uther Pendragon. He shall bring peace and order where war and disorder exist. He will have King Uther Pendragon's full royal blood. This made the Archbishop happy. How shall we know the real king? So it came to be that Merlin used his magic. He made a huge marble stone appear before the cathedral door. Upon this block of marble stood an anvil. Into this he thrust a sword. In letters of gold near the sword these words appeared. Whoso pulleth out this sword is by right of birth King of England. As Christmas approached, Merlin asked the Archbishop to call together the people of the land. He would then ask each man to draw out the sword. The man who succeeded would be the rightful King of Britain. Christmas fell upon them. It seemed as if the entire world descended on London. There are so many wise and great noblemen here, the Archbishop worried. What if we don't find one worthy to be the king of the realm? Fear not, my lord, said Merlin. We will not find him among those we think are extraordinary and worthy. It is among those that are unknown we shall find the one that is entirely worthy. With the arrival of so many noblemen, the Archbishop proclaimed that there should be a tournament. It would take place in a field 3 days before the men would be asked to remove the sword from the stone. All knights who were of noble blood were asked to partake in this tournament. Sir Ector of Bonmaison, named the Trustworthy Knight, made his way to London with his two sons. The elder was Sir Kay, an honorable and well-known knight of great valor. The youngest was 18-year-old Arthur. Sir Ector led his sons to London and set up a pavilion. He hung his banner like all the other nobles. The sky was filled with fluttering flags that represented the most noble families. Among the great lords who came was King Lot of Orkney. He had married King Uther Pendragon's stepdaughter, Morgana Le Fay. King Urien of Gore, who wed the other daughter, Margaise, joined them. Soon the day of the tournament arrived. With his father's permission, Sir Kay entered. He asked Arthur to be his squire-at-arms. During the first rounds of battle, no one had done better than Sir Kay. Although many were trampled upon by their own horses, Sir Kay fought with ease. He conquered them all. Sir Kay, came a voice, do battle with me. Sir Kay turned to see Sir Balmorgana. He accepted the challenge, and it was a fierce battle. one that left Sir Kay's sword snapped in two. Three knights saw Sir Kay's trouble and pulled him to safety. Arthur ran to Sir Kay and offered him wine. Sir Kay said, "Arthur, run to our pavilion and fetch me a new sword." Arthur did as he was told, but when he got to the pavilion, he couldn't find a sword. He feared he would let his brother down. Then he remembered a sword he'd seen by the cathedral and ran to it. Not seeing any guard in sight, Arthur leaped upon the rock and pulled the sword from the stone. It was his. Arthur wrapped the sword in a cloak and ran back to the tournament. When Sir Kay unwrapped the cloth, he was speechless. He recognized the sword at once. "Arthur," he finally said, "where did thee get this sword?" Chapter 2, The Sword in the Stone. "Brother," said Arthur, "I will tell the entire truth. I couldn't find a sword in the pavilion. Fearing thee would lose thy battle, I remember the sword at the cathedral. I pulled it out with ease. I wrapped it in my cloak and ran to give it to thee." Sir Kay collected his thoughts. "My brother doesn't know the significance of what he's done. Why shouldn't I lay claim to his great feat and reap the glory?" "Give me the cloak and the sword," commanded Sir Kay. "Tell no one what thou hast done and keep it between us. Now go tell father to come here right away." Young Arthur was completely unaware of what he had done and what it meant. He did as Sir Kay told him. "Father, thee must come at once," Arthur told Sir Edgar. "Kay needs thee to go straight away to our pavilion. I think he has something extraordinary to tell thee." When Sir Edgar arrived at the pavilion, he noticed that Sir Kay's eyes shone with a brightness never seen before. "What's the matter, son?" "It's a wonderful matter," said Sir Kay. He took his farmer by the arm and led him to a table in the center of the pavilion. Upon the table lay the cloak, which Sir Kay unwrapped to reveal the sword's blade. It glistened with splendor. Sir Edgar gasped. "What do my eyes see?" "It's the sword that stood embedded in the stone," said Sir Kay. "I beg of thee, please tell me what this means." Sir Edgar replied, "First, tell me how thee came upon this sword." "Sire, my sword broke in battle, and I found this sword and I pulled it out," Sir Kay replied. Sir Edgar wasn't sure if he should believe his ears. "If thee didn't draw this sword out of the stone, then thee should be able to thrust it back inside the stone." Sir Kay cried out, "Who could perform such a great miracle as that?" Sir Edgar raised an eye. "Such a miracle is no greater than the miracle that thee performed in pulling the sword out from where it was embedded. Whosoever heard of a man who could draw forth a sword from a place but not thrust it back to where it came?" Sir Kay worried that he wouldn't be able to complete the task. "If my brother can do it, surely I'm just as worthy," he thought. He wrapped the sword in the cloak again. Sir Kay headed toward the cathedral with Arthur and Sir Edgar. As much as he tried to plunge the sword back into the stone, he couldn't. "It is an impossible task of which thee asked me to do," Sir Kay said. "How could thee get it out," asked Sir Edgar, "if thee cannot get it back in?" Sir Kay remained silent. Arthur stepped forward. "Father, it was I who drew the sword out of the stone. I believe I shall be able to put it back in." So Arthur took the sword from his brother and leaped upon the marble stone. He thrust the sword into the anvil. It went straight into the center of the marble. After he performed this miracle, he drew the sword out once again, swiftly and easily. Then once again he thrust it back into the stone as he had done before. Sir Edgar cried out, "What a miracle my eyes have seen!" He knelt down before Arthur. Arthur was confused. "Why do thee kneel before me?" He trembled. "Please, father, answer me." "I am not thy father, Arthur. Thee are of royal blood. The blood of kings flows through thy veins. The way thee handled the sword proves it," Sir Edgar replied. Arthur started to cry. Sir Kay couldn't move. "Is my brother a king?" he thought. "Could this be true?" "Don't be afraid, Arthur," said Sir Edgar. "The time has come for me to tell thee the truth. 18 years ago, Merlin came to me. He showed me the ring of Uther Pendragon as proof of his honorable intentions. He told me to meet Sir Ulfius that night. That evening, he presented me with thee. I was told to raise thee as my own and tell no one any differently. I did all that he asked. Until now, I have never known who thy father was. I suspected kingly blood, but now I know the whole truth. Only the son of Uther Pendragon could draw forth the sword from the anvil as thou hast done." Arthur cried out, "No, no, it can't be. I've lost my father. I would rather have my father than be king." Two men approached Arthur and the sword. Sir Edgar recognized Merlin and Sir Ulfius at once. "What cheer!" shouted Sir Edgar. "This is the child thee brought to me 18 years ago. He is now the rightful king." Merlin smiled. "He shall become Britain's greatest and most famous king. Within him lies the hope and salvation of the realm. Many great knights of excellence will gather around him and perform marvelous deeds. His reign will be full of splendor and glory. All the people shall rejoice in his kinghood." Sir Kay stood motionless. Merlin looked sternly at Sir Edgar and Sir Kay and said, "Protect and guard Arthur for the next 3 days. Behold him as the apple of thy eye, for in thy possession thee have the peace that was once ours in this land." When Merlin and Sir Ulfius left, Arthur kissed his father's hand. "Thee will always be my father until the end." Arthur was true to his word. He called Sir Ector his father until 5 years later when death came to Sir Ector. When next we come back to King Arthur, chapter 3, the new king and a new sword. Till next time.